The first snow had just begun to fall as my plane touched down in Juneau, Alaska. The cold bit at my skin through my jacket, a stark reminder of how far from home I was. I was here chasing a story that had fascinated me since childhood. The Kushtaka, shape-shifting creatures from Tlingit folklore. Known to transform into otters or men, these beings were said to be both mischievous and dangerous. I checked into a small bed and breakfast near the harbor. The proprietor, a grizzled fisherman named Hank, raised an eyebrow when I mentioned the Kushtaka. "You're either very brave or very foolish to be looking for them," he said with a chuckle. His laugh didn't reach his eyes, which remained serious and wary. After settling into my room, I went for a walk along the harbor. The icy wind whipped off the water, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed. Fishermen were busy preparing their boats, their voices carrying over the sound of the waves. I stopped to chat with a few of them, asking if they had ever encountered the Kushtaka. Most laughed it off, calling it an old wives' tale, but a few exchanged nervous glances. "I've seen things," one man said, his voice low. "Otters standing upright, watching us with eyes too intelligent to be animal. Be careful out there." The next morning, I visited the local museum to learn more about the Tlingit folklore surrounding the Kushtaka. The curator, a woman named Eliza, welcomed me warmly. She led me to a dimly lit exhibit filled with artifacts and artwork depicting the legendary creatures. The Tlingit believe that the Kushtaka are spirits who can transform into otters or men, Eliza explained. They're known to lure people away from safety, especially during storms or foggy weather. Some say they steal souls, while others believe they're protectors, saving those lost in the wilderness. I spent hours studying the intricate carvings and masks, each one telling a different story about the Kushtaka. One particular carving caught my eye. It depicted a man being surrounded by otters, their eyes glinting with a mischievous, almost malevolent intelligence. Eliza noticed my interest. "That one is particularly famous," she said. "It's said to be based on a true story. A fisherman went missing, and when he was found, he spoke of otters standing like men, guiding him through the fog." Armed with knowledge and a growing sense of curiosity, I set out to the nearby village of Angoon, where sightings of the Kushtaka were reportedly more frequent. The journey was treacherous, with icy roads and thick forest closing in on either side. As I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I arrived at Angoon in the late afternoon. The village was small, with brightly colored houses and a close-knit community. I introduced myself to the village elder, a man named Jacob. His weathered face broke into a smile when I mentioned the Kushtaka. "They've been part of our stories for generations," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Many here have seen them. Some are afraid. Others believe they're guardians. It depends on what the Kushtaka wants from you." Jacob agreed to introduce me to some of the villagers who had encountered the shapeshifters. That evening, we gathered around a roaring fire, the cold kept at bay by the warmth of the flames and the stories being shared. One man, Peter, spoke of a fishing trip that had turned eerie. "We were out on the water when a thick fog rolled in," he said, his eyes distant. "We heard splashing and saw otters in the water, but they were different. They stood on their hind legs, watching us. One even mimicked my movements, like it was mocking me." Another woman, Agnes recounted a time when she was lost in the woods. I heard voices like people calling my name, she said. I followed them, thinking it was my family, but I found myself surrounded by otters. They led me back to the path, but their eyes, they weren't animal eyes. Determined to experience the legend firsthand, I decided to venture deeper into the wilderness. Jacob warned me to be cautious, providing me with supplies and a map of the area. The Kushtaka are most active near the water, he said. Stay alert and don't stray from the path. I hiked along the coast, the landscape both beautiful and forbidding. The dense forest pressed in from one side, while the ocean stretched out on the other. As dusk fell, the temperature plummeted, and a heavy fog rolled in, blanketing everything in a ghostly shroud. I set up camp near a small cove, the sound of the waves lulling me into a false sense of security. As the fire crackled and the shadows danced, I felt a sudden chill. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I had the distinct feeling that I was not alone. I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the area. The beam cut through the fog, revealing nothing but trees and rocks. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I turned the light towards the water and froze. Standing at the edge of the cove were 3 otters, but they were unlike any I had seen before. They stood on their hind legs, watching me intently. Their eyes glowed with an eerie intelligence, and I could swear they were studying me. I took a step back, my heart pounding. The otters moved in unison, matching my movements. One of them raised a paw, mimicking my gesture. It was uncanny, almost human-like. I knew then that these were no ordinary otters. The fog thickened, and the temperature dropped even further. My breath came out in visible puffs as I tried to maintain my composure. The otters continued to watch me, their eyes reflecting the light of the fire. I decided to speak, my voice trembling slightly. "What do you want?" I asked, feeling foolish for talking to animals, but deep down I knew they were listening. To my astonishment, one of the otters tilted its head and stepped forward. It shifted and grew, its form becoming more human-like until a man stood before me. His features were sharp, almost otherworldly, and his eyes retained the same glint as the otters. "We are the Kushtaka," he said, his voice a low, melodic whisper. "We mean you no harm, but you seek us out. Why?" I stammered, trying to find my voice. "I wanted to understand your story, to learn why you're here and what you want from us." The Kushtaka man nodded. "We are guardians and tricksters. We protect those who are lost, but we also test them. Your kind has forgotten the old ways, the balance of nature. We remind you." I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Despite the fear, there was a profound wisdom in his words. "What should I do?" I asked. "Respect the land and its spirits," he replied. "Remember the old stories and honor them. We are not your enemies, but we are not to be taken lightly." With that, he began to shift back into his otter form, the transformation both mesmerizing and unsettling. The 3 otters disappeared into the fog, leaving me alone by the fire. I returned to Angoon the next day, my mind racing with the encounter. Jacob and the villagers listened intently as I recounted what had happened. There was a sense of awe and respect in their eyes. "You've been touched by the Kushtaka," Jacob said. "Few outsiders have had such an experience. Remember what they told you." One spent a few more days in the village, learning more about the Tlingit culture and their relationship with the land and its spirits. The stories of the Kushtaka took on a new meaning, no longer just folklore, but a living part of their heritage. When it was time to leave, I felt a deep connection to the place and its people. The journey back to Juneau was filled with reflection. I had come seeking a ghost story and found something far richer, a lesson in respect and harmony with nature. Back home, I wrote about my experience, weaving together the accounts of the villagers and my own encounter. The article resonated with many, sparking a renewed interest in Tlingit folklore and the Kushtaka. Readers wrote to me, sharing their own stories and seeking to understand the deeper meaning behind the legends. The Kushtaka became a symbol of the delicate balance between humans and nature, a reminder of the old ways that we must not forget. Every year, I return to Alaska, visiting Angoon and the villagers who welcome me so warmly. I pay my respects to the land and its spirits, leaving offerings at the edge of the cove where I first saw the Kushtaka. And each time as I stand by the water, I feel a sense of peace. The Kushtaka are there, watching, reminding me of the lessons I learned. They are a part of the land, as am I, and in that connection, I find a deeper understanding of the world and my place within it. Years later, the legend of the Kushtaka continues to fascinate and inspire. My story has been shared widely, drawing attention to the rich cultural heritage of the Tlingit people. I've spoken at conferences and written books, but the most meaningful moments are those spent in quiet reflection by the Alaskan waters. The Kushtaka taught me that legends are more than just stories. They are lessons from the past, guiding us towards a better future. They remind us to respect the land, honor its spirits, and maintain the delicate balance that sustains us all. As I stand by the cove, the wind whispers through the trees, carrying with it the ancient wisdom of the Kushtaka, and in that moment I know I am not alone. Thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like and subscribe. I will see you again next week.